I am. All right. Can you guys hear me? Remember when you were in 8th grade and you're about to graduate and the teachers always said, this is the best class that ever came through, and it was really exciting because you thought you really were, but they were really lying to you to make you feel good? Well, you guys are really the best at coming back after break. I'm not kidding. Like usually we're pulling people in from the, but thank you for getting back on time. The weather's so nice. I appreciate it. You can get out and have some sun in between the last session. We're going to talk about something right now that's a little bit different, but it's kind of like a multiplier that you can use with all the sessions that you've seen up till now. And as we were putting ROI20 together, which is kind of my job, to pull all these pieces together, but I had a lot of help from Jody and Lynn and Roland and Adam and Jake. And we've been doing this for 31 years, and I've been doing it for about 20-ish. And you would think by now I would realize not to give myself the segment after lunch on Thursday. And every year I do it, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. Oh, wait a second. So try to keep you awake. I want you to take a look at a quick video first. And those of you that were in my breakout session yesterday realize I'm a little bit of a Cubs fan, a bit of a baseball geek, but it will all make sense. As you're watching this video, pay attention to the play-by-play announcer, who's the legendary Harry Carey. Anyone know who Harry Carey is? What is Harry like? Yes. Tom Jacobs mentioned it before. He loves his Budweiser. So this is a ball game. Back in 1994, the Cubs were starting a new center fielder named Tuffy Rhodes. No one ever heard of him before. He was going up to the plate against a pitcher by the name of Dwight Gooden, who was probably the best of his time. And I want to show you what Tuffy Rhodes did. So this is the tale of Tuffy.
3-2 pitch. Swung on. High fly ball. Way back. Might be. Could be. And in.
That's after 3 Budweisers.
3 balls and the strike. Long drive. Way back. It might be. It could be. And in. Holy cow.
And there's a drive. Way back. Oh my goodness, Rhodes, can you believe it?
Tuffy for president.
He has hit 3 home runs. And there's the curtain call.
So I'll get to that in just a second and what Tuffy Rhodes has to do with selling. But I think something else was happening there besides Harry Carey throwing down the beverages. I think there are a lot of baseball geeks like myself putting them on their fantasy team. If you hit 3 home runs on the first day, he's going to have 500 by the end of the season. Does anyone know who Tuffy Rhodes is? Exactly. Okay? He did. Yeah, that was his peak. He ended up with 13 home runs for his whole career. Looking at the guest presenters, Tom or Dwayne or Mike, Dr. Z, they all said, Laura, they all had this common thread. They all worked hard, and then they worked smart. And they couldn't work smart until they worked hard. It's impossible to make that leap. But they all decided, you heard Dwayne say it this morning. He said, if I was sure of anything, I was going to crack the code. He watched his dad work. He said, I'm going to work smarter. Oh, yeah, I'm going to work hard, but I'm going to figure it out. I'll crack the code, get the math out, and then I'll do it the right way. And every one of them had their same story in that context. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but how you can actually fast forward into a smarter working environment, whether it's for you, your team, or if you're an AE, how to take a multiplier. So we live life in 3 dimensions, all right? I'm not just talking about physical space, I'm talking about our selling life. Of course, there are 4 dimensions, but I want to talk a little bit about these 3 dimensions that we see in our world every single day. And these business owners have the same exact 3 dimensions. One of them is always a number, okay, it's an integer. One's a percentage, and the third one's a dollar or a currency. All right? How many opportunities am I giving myself? What's my conversion rate against those opportunities? What's my average ticket? What's my profitability? And then we multiply them together, we get a sense of how well we're doing. Okay? We have those same 3 variables. We know what they are. These guys really know what they are. In fact, you heard earlier, well, my TV leads are converting at 80%, and my third-party leads are converting at 35%. So they've got sub-dimensions figured out in terms of what their close rates are against subcategories of their traffic. That's where we need to be. But it's not just those dimensions. It's the delta. It's how do I change those? And since we're multiplying them, we know if we change all three of those at the same time, we get a multiplier effect. Okay, so instead of growing geometrically, we start to grow exponentially. We've seen this happen time and time again. In fact, a lot of people who go through ROI20, ROI19, they connect with our ESA consultant in their market. They say, I doubled my developmental in 1 year. It's not atypical to hear that. It's not that they doubled any one of those. It's that they figured out the math, like Dwayne did. All right? They worked harder, and then they worked smarter. So we're going to talk a little bit about this today. Now, in our world today, we have attribution to say, oh, if I'm going to affect a change, I can show you precisely how that change occurred. So now we're getting even smarter, so it's happening faster. And we can keep pumping more effort into those avenues where the changes are happening faster. But are we doing that in our own internal systems, in our own selling systems? And a lot of times, it's like we're the cobbler's children. We've got the worst shoes. Like Roland said about mine yesterday. Yes, I was going to wear sandals today, but I decided not to. That's for later. There's a fourth dimension. Just like there's a fourth dimension, time and space, right? And this has everything to do with time. I want to talk about this fourth dimension because it acts as another multiplier on what you're doing on a daily basis, and it accelerates your transition from working hard to working smart. This multiplier is your habit. When we ask salespeople and sales managers, what's the most important thing you could measure? And a lot of times we'll hear, close rate. If I have an AE who has a great close rate, I can put them in front of anyone. Or meet rate. If I have an AE who can get the calls, that's where we're really soft right now. I want someone with the highest meet rate because we need calls. Markets are cyclical. I'm going to prove to you that the most important thing that you need to work on in your station is habit rate. And we're going to define what that is, what it looks like, and how you can change it overnight. Well, not overnight. It's over 66 nights. But like I mentioned in my breakout yesterday, this isn't conjecture. This has been proven time and time again, not just from our own internal tools, but psychological and sociological works have shown if I forge a habit, I almost feel unnatural not doing that thing on a specific day. So let's talk a little bit about this fourth dimension. First of all, if we're thinking about those four dimensions, we know we've got a volume, we've got the ability to convert on that volume of inquiry or leads, and then we've got an average ticket or profitability, that currency number. Sometimes we tell ourselves lies. I call them mistruths. That sounds like something Jim Comey might say. So they really are lies, okay? And what we discover is that they're not intentional lies. A lot of times we get caught up in over-measuring things. Now with attribution at our disposal, who's guilty of that? We really measure everything today. So how do we know if we're even measuring the right thing? And how do we simplify it so that we're not doing too much work in that transition from working harder to working smarter? I want to show you a quick video. And in this video, all you have to do, talk about a quick, easy exercise for your post-lunch coma, is to count how many times there are going to be two teams on the screen passing a ball. All right, there's a white team, team in white shirts, team in black shirts. All you have to do is count how many times the white team passes the ball. Has anyone seen this before? Okay, be honest. All right. I need you to be quiet during this video so people can mentally count, okay? Because, all right, here we go.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
Shout out your answer.
The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla?
You did?
For people who haven't seen or heard about a
Good
video
job.
like this before, about half missed the gorilla.
You guys have seen this before.
If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion.
So, the reason I show that video, and I knew about that video and the gorilla, and I found this on YouTube, but this is a new version. I didn't know about the curtain or the player leaving, so it caught me too the first time I saw this. The reason I show that video is a lot of times we get so caught up on measuring the wrong thing that we're missing the bigger picture. And that's where the lying starts. So I'm not saying it's an intentional lie, but one of the first ones we tell ourselves when I talked about those 3 dimensions is, oh yeah, we do that too. We measure our volume, we measure our opportunities and our conversion rate and our average ticket when we compare ourselves to these business owners. And I beg to differ, because if we're on the left side and they're on the right side, the difference is big. It's not that we don't measure it. It's that when we ask ourselves how often we measure it, the answer comes back, well, we sometimes measure it, okay? We don't do it every day, but we have a good sense of that. That's where your habit rate starts. If I'm not measuring this consistently every day, even when I have an offer, in other words, in baseball terminology, I go 0 for 4. I have no opportunities, no conversions, no average ticket to talk about. I should still record that. I'm denying myself the opportunity to improve. Now, if you asked a business owner in this room what their habit rate is, it's probably well over 100%. And I need to define what habit rate is really quickly. Habit rate is, of all the days that I work, which days am I developmentally focused? Which days am I actually recording mentally or physically how many opportunities I'm giving myself, how many conversions, and what my average ticket is? We don't do it enough. We need to do it more. And like Roland said, to be a thought leader, we got to work a little bit harder to get us to the point where we're going to be working smarter. We took a poll of you before this conference started to get a sense of where your close ratio was, okay? Now, I'm a bit of a stat geek, and, you know, a tip of the hat to the people who are overperforming, but that is not a standard distribution. So immediately what that tells us is some of this data is probably incorrect, and there's a few of you that said not sure who are very honest, so you're not liars, okay? But what this tells us immediately is maybe we don't know what our close ratio is, or maybe it's different by the day or the minute or the year, or maybe it's in this 10-point range and I nailed it. Point being, if I asked Dwayne Sharping right now, what's your close ratio for television? He'd say 80%. Okay? He could probably go through each one of the people on his team and give you who he wants in front of the biggest opportunity that day. But wait a second. Now hang on, Dave. These guys have scale. They have to measure this stuff every day. It's important. Tom Jacobs is talking about billions of dollars of assets. Okay? He's talking about converting billions of dollars from banks to credit unions, from fee-based investments into something that's working better, from investments that go up to here and they don't drop, like Tom said, right? So they have to measure it every day. And again, I would beg to differ. Because again, we say, well, entrepreneurs must measure things every day because of their scale. It's a requirement. They can't get away without doing it. And they do it. That's why their habit rates are over 100%. And I say, no. Entrepreneurs have big scale because they measure these things every day. And when we think like that, what happens? Our scale takes off. Because immediately we see the opportunity in our own dimensions. It's there in black and white. We can't avoid it, and there's no more lying. There's no more mistruths in our math. Here's another objection or mistruth that we tell ourselves. Why am I going to do this, Dave? I'm already busy enough, and we do know you're busy. Most of you are wearing 15 to 20 hats today, okay? We get that. But do you think the business owners who have habit rates over 100% are busy too? And their habit rates are over 100%. So I want to mathematically prove to you why the time exists to do this, but also how if you do this every day, it frees up more time, okay? We're going to take a quick poll of the room, and I want you to guess, what do you think your habit rate is? As an industry, not just yours, but how often do you think we reconnect with our marketplaces in a developmental mindset? Just shout out numbers. What's it? 25. Higher? Lower? When we measure it, okay, now this is a measured sample, it's 43%. This is our industry. Now, when you measure something, you improve it. So immediately, that number might not be true of our entire industry. That is a subset of our industry that knows they're being measured on habit rate, so naturally it goes up. So that 25% was actually pretty smart. So probably around 20 to 22%, or half of that. Well, what we know now is that we need to be a lot higher. Can we be at 100%? Absolutely. But all the evidence in the world is pointing to us saying, if I can get my own habit rate as a salesperson above 75%, not only do all of my other dimensions increase, my ability to predict my 2020 or my 2021 becomes much more precise. So as you're doing budgets towards the end of the year, you know what your number is going to be with a very small interval of confidence, okay, instead of a wide one. It's a good place to be. Now, as it relates to habit, I want to give you a quick example. And this is very personal to me. We've done a lot of training recently, and one of the areas of habit that we need to get better at, I'll give you an example, is objection handling, okay? When we first hear that objection as a new AE for the first time, we're caught like a deer in the headlights. But it's not until that second or third time we realize, hey, I can answer this in like 15 seconds and get the meeting back on track. I had an example of this within the last year, okay? So questions came up while I was doing some training, and I was completely caught in the headlights. I didn't know how to answer the question. And what I realized right away, it was my brother who was kind of messing with me. So as a kid, I really, really liked Mary Tyler Moore, okay? And I didn't cry if I couldn't stay up late enough to watch her. That's all just BS. But we'd be answering questions in the training. It'd be like, so Dave, are domestic brands, do they tend to spend more or less than import brands? And how much do you love Mary Tyler Moore? So this guy was planning questions in my training class, and I was like, yes, I do. And what was the part about the domestics? But what I realized as they kept putting Mary Tyler Moore questions into these training sessions, I could come back with answers. Or even better yet, a question of that AE to go back to Roland and say, Roland, Dave wants to know where your autographed poster of Captain Steubing is from The Love Boat. So we know how to answer those objections in 15 seconds. Very personal example, but as we improve, all of our dimensions start improving. Our meet rate improves, our close rate improves, our average ask improves, but more importantly, our volume goes up because we want more of the same. This is data that came out of Lyft, and I want to explain what this is. The bubbles represent individual people, okay? On the x-axis, we have habit rate. On the y-axis, we have meeting rate. There's a straight line correlationship between improving my habit rate and seeing my other dimensions go up. I can put any other dimension on that y-axis and we'll see improvement. The size of the bubble, here's the kicker, that's the average ask. So not only do I have more confidence to get the call, but my ability to actually size up a client and understand what's needed to get the job done improves. So my average ask increases. And I probably have a lot more raving fans, so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This happens in every scenario that we've tried, and I'm not just talking about lift trading. This happened way back when we did Fast Forward, okay, many years ago before the recession. So the question about working harder, I know a lot of you are looking at this saying, I don't want to do all that. That's a lot of work. One more quick exercise as we ask the question, who's really working harder? If I'm going to do this every day, where's the time going to come from? So let's think about two AEs, okay? AE1, or we'll call him Larry. Larry's got a low habit rate, and Helen has a high habit rate, okay? These are real-world examples. We have anonymized their names to make it easier. But Larry has a habit rate of 26%, meaning 1 out of every 4 days. And a lot of times we see this as people start into our training. Very low habit rate. But as they start understanding the benefit of doing things every day, to their meet rate, their close rate, their average ask, the habit rates increase. So Helen's in that latter category. So what happens when Larry and Helen go into the market and connect? Interesting thing. Look at their meeting rate, their close rate, the revenue they generated over the course of the program. But most importantly, if we do a little math and you say, how many conversations with the marketplace does it take Larry to get 1 yes versus how many does it take Helen? It's wildly different. So Larry says, I'm not doing that extra work, but it takes him 72 dialogues with the marketplace to get to the 1 commitment, and it takes Helen 9 because she has a better meet rate and a better close rate. So when someone says to me, yeah, I don't have the time to do that, I'm already wearing enough hats, I got to call bullshit. The data's right there, 8-1 in favor of Helen, okay? I'd rather be Helen than Larry. Pretty simple proposition, but mathematically, and again, these are extremes, but when we see even a slight nudge in our habit rate, especially once it gets past that 75 to 80% threshold, that's when we know this person's locked in and they go from this to having more of an exponential career projection. Here's one more, I guess, objection or lie that we tell ourselves. That I can't produce scale in a cyclical market. It's very difficult to do. Because right now, meeting rates they're difficult. It's difficult to get a home service company in, or it's difficult to get a lawyer, okay? And again, this is something that we tell ourselves every so often, especially as the economy starts going down. We're like, oh man, I can't get a call. Can you sit down with an auto dealer today? I can't. But it's that little voice in your head telling you that. It's not what we're actually seeing. Scale is actually a function of habit. And I want to demonstrate this to you visually. I'm more of a visual learner. And think of your own funnel for a second, all right? And how, I think Dwayne touched on this earlier, how we need to distribute all of those customers throughout our funnel and what that does for us. Here are 2 different funnels. One of them is the victim of a cyclical economy. The other one says, I'm going to keep my habit rate high because my meeting rate, I don't want that to suffer. So the person on the left ends up getting a lot of appointments right when the market is good, and it's like trying to push a grapefruit through a hose. Because as all of those clients start going through the funnel, they can't possibly do what they need to do to get them to conversion. They can't get them from awareness to intention to conversion. Someone with a higher habit rate, though, has really good distribution of their funnel, and their pipeline is consistent, no matter what the economy looks like. We can do this. All right? If you said on Wednesday morning, we deserve more, this is where it starts. Something simple you can do in about 2 minutes every day is put 1 row into a spreadsheet. How many dialogues did I have with the marketplace? How many qualified meetings did I get from the marketplace? How many yeses did I get? Here's another lie we tell ourselves, and it's okay because we don't like failure, especially new AEs. They deal with this all the time. They may have come from a job where they were used to hearing yes, and that's not common in our industry. We hear a lot more no's than we do yeses, okay? So when you ask someone to be honest and put down and record every day what their numbers are, they say, what's the point of putting a big fat zero in a spreadsheet? And the real question we should be asking is, how do I respond to offers? Now, I want to replay that video again. If you could turn the sound down, though, because I'm probably going to be talking over it. I have to tell you about Tuffy Rhodes, okay? So he hit 3 home runs that day against Dwight Gooden, probably in his prime, okay? The Cubs lost that day, by the way. He hit 3 home runs that day. He ended his career with a grand total of 13 home runs. And the short story of Tuffy's career is he didn't respond well to offers. He started swinging for the fences, started striking out, and then all of a sudden the Cubs were looking for a new center fielder. But starting in that same outfield on that same day, there was another young star who a lot of people didn't know, who went 0 for 5, made a couple of gaffes in the field. They didn't like that. Has anybody heard of Sammy Sosa? Okay, Sammy ended up with over 600 home runs. Sammy responded very well. He put zeros across his spreadsheet that day, and probably the next day. And say what you will about his pharmaceutical experimentations later in his career, Sammy got after it every day. The bleacher bums loved him. They forgave him for the corked bat and the me speaking no English testimony in front of Congress, because they knew this guy was a go-getter. He was a red ass. He went after it every day. So they forgave him. That's the power of habit. 2 different stories on an opening day, but it shows you the power of, yeah, I do need to write this 0 down, because my response to an offer, as a salesperson, think about that. If I'm looking at 3 zeros, I'm probably not going to sleep that well that night. I'm going to get up a little earlier and get after it the next day. Our careers don't always go like this. They're like heartbeats, okay? You think of a heartbeat or your own career. Usually, the biggest peaks come after the deepest valleys. Really ask yourself, how resilient am I? So when you ask that last question, what's the point of putting 3 goose eggs in a spreadsheet? There's a big point to it. That's how you start making a difference every day, and that's how you take the information today and apply the multiplier effect. And if you do measure these things, you will see your KPIs go up and your team's KPIs go up in 66 days. Your homework? Very simple. Imprint habit now. When you get someone on your team, or if this is you, okay, think about that 90-day onboarding process. And I like to think of it, instead of one process, there's 2 paths. There's a knowledge path, and there's an action path. Start the action path first. Because a lot of times we impart the knowledge in the first 60 days, and then we get to the last trimester, and we're like, now we're going to teach you how to sell. And they have not 30 days, but they have basically 4 weeks, so 20 days to imprint a habit, and it's impossible. Start them day 1. Imprint habit now, because the knowledge path goes faster when the action path is laid out first. And that's all I got. Any questions? All right, we're going to keep the day moving. Jake's going to come up here, and guess what? We've got more fun ahead. So, Jake, take it away.